Made this floor lamp for my wife, and I'm gonna show you how I did it in this video, only using hand tools. In the last months, I've been exploring hand printing graphics on other similar projects, other similar lamps, and most of my previous lamps were centered around geometric design, geometric patterns, but on this, I wanted something more organic. I began by sketching some floral motifs using a brush pen, and the focus here is on varying the line width to create the idea of shadows and highlights. And it's a simple technique. After a couple of warm-up sketches, I think anybody can do it. I made a few of them and I just selected two of them, I scanned them, and arranged them in a composition that I found to be more pleasing. I'm going to use this linoleum replacement material to cut the drawing, making basically a big stamp. And I transferred the drawing onto this wannabe linoleum material using white carbon paper. And by using this white carbon paper, the lines are more visible on the blue surface. The key of this tracing at this stage is to maintain the energy and the fluidity of the original drawing. For tools, I have used these file chisels for the cutting or carving process. They are designed for both wood and linoleum cutting. They have different profiles such as a U shape or a V shape. And for this project, I began with a very small V-shaped chisel to be able to tackle the finer details. Cutting the linoleum took roughly around 8 hours as I had to be particularly careful with the thinner lines. And once I'm done with the cutting, I will do an initial test print to see where there are problems that I need to fix. I'm using an acrylic paint made by a company called Speedball, and this paint can be washed with water, so it's not that messy as the classic oil ones. To roll out the paint, I'm using a brayer, and to apply pressure evenly, I'm using a barren. So if you want to search for these tools online, the thing that you roll out the paint is a brayer, and the thing that you push on it, it's a barren. I also spent time removing excess material from the areas that they weren't supposed to be printed, just to reduce the unnecessary noise, or chatter, how they call it. The test print was okay, and I was very pleased with the shoji test print, so I made it into a wall art. With the printing done, I shifted to make the frame. And I selected the quarter sawn wood from the home center, which provided a straight grain which I wanted for this project. One piece it costs around 8 euros, and it's about 2 centimeters by 2 by 240 in length, so it's not that cheap. And the most important thing I have found to be is how you prepare your material. Even though it's quite a boring task, it will make everything fit so much better, especially when you're working with hand tools. Like in this case, the wood is never exactly well dimensioned from the home center, and the pieces are not actually square. So I will try to plane them to be as equal as I can make them. After cutting them the same size, I decided I don't like how wide the lamp will be, so I had to trim a centimeter. But sometimes you need to do this stuff if you want to have more pleasing proportions. For this lamp is more about aesthetics, and I don't need a really strong joint. So I like to use this three-way joint, and even though they are hard to do with hand tools, or at least they are hard for me to do with hand tools, I think the end result is much better than just butt jointing them. And I'm using this technique with a stop and cutting on both sides by rotating the stock. And by doing it like this, the joints are going to fit pretty well. As this is softwood, I will go on each piece with a shooting sander so the angles are exactly 45 degrees. This machinist blocks helps me to keep the frame angles at 90 degrees. And for the glue, I'm using a combination of wood glue and super glue, and the super glue acts more like a clamp. And I found this to be strong enough for these joints. And besides the glue, the shoji paper will be tensioned and will hold everything together. You can see I dropped a part of the frame, but there was no problem with the joints, they didn't break apart. In the final step of putting the frame together, I used clamps with very low pressure just to keep everything together. A quick clean with some 240 grit sandpaper and a layer of wax, because this will make in a future step the removal of some shoji paper so much more easier. With the rice glue, I still haven't nailed the right amount, so I'm trying to make it more equal, but there were still some overflows, creating some issues. I'm putting the shoji paper on the outside as it would be easier to change or to replace, because there is a history of my son putting holes in my projects. By exposing the wood and cleaning the edges, I think it raises the quality of the lamp. And the last thing is to chamfer the edges and tension the shoji paper with a light mist of water. I did make a base for the lamp, though I didn't film that part as it was more experimental. So far, it's holding and it's looking okay. Overall, I'm satisfied with the outcome. I think I'm gonna try to mix these mediums again in the future. I think the hand printing looks really interesting, and what matter most is that my wife approves it.